Hello friends and welcome to my guide on how to play Crystal Maiden. She is one of the stronger supports right now, so I really recommend you play her. But I gotta dispel some misinformation about her first, because if you think about her incorrectly, you're not gonna play her to the most effectiveness. She is not some weak aura bot, okay? If you're a new player and your friend said, oh, play Crystal Maiden, you know what you're doing, you'll just give us mana. True, but it's very lame because she's more fragile than a carry player's ego and her mana pool is tiny, so you really have to know what you're doing or else you'll waste your spells, you'll feed easily, and it's not going to be any fun for a new player. You can still learn to play her, especially with the help of this guide, but it's going to be a little harder than someone more survivable. For experienced players, you cannot think of her as this weak, do-nothing support. She actually has a lot of aggressive early potential with some of the strongest level 2 power spike in her spells, and so you need to be out there looking to crush people who disrespect you as a weak support. In order to do so, you can follow a skill build that looks like this. So by level 2, you want a point in Crystal Nova and Frostbite each. The order depends on the game. Crystal Nova is more generally useful, and I recommend that if you're new to the hero. It is AoE, so it's great for the bounty rune fights when lots of heroes are showing up. It's good in the lane versus 2 heroes. You can hit both of them, and you can use it to secure the range creep. So just lots of general value from Crystal Nova. Frostbite is better for individual target aggression. So it is a root, which is arguably more powerful than a slow, and it does 150 magic damage, which is 40 more than Crystal Nova for a single target. So if you need the root setup, like you're against a mobile hero with an escape, root setup into a teammate's follow-up stun, that can be a good reason to take it for first blood. Or in the laning stage, your partner has a stun, so you Frostbite, we want to kill this one guy, the other guy can't do anything about it, Frostbite that guy, follow-up attacks, follow stuns, that's when Frostbite can be better. It's also good if you're just trading like 1v1 with the support. All you need to do is keep them away from your carry. You use Frostbite, it's going to be more individual damage, plus it disarms one of only 2 roots to do so they can't even fight back with their attacks. It's also good against summoned heroes, especially ones that are worth more money like Beastmaster's Boar, because this lasts 10 seconds on creeps, and so you'll kill the creep, you'll get gold and XP for it. They don't get to they don't do anything with the creep, they can only try to deny it. It's not so good against someone like Nature's Prophet, who has tons of summons, and just killing one doesn't matter that much, and it's not even worth that much, so it's kind of not worth your mana, but like the creeps from Chen and Enchantress, the Beastmaster Boars, that's when Frostbite level 1 can be pretty good. But again, by level 2, you want 1 in each, because together that is 260 magic damage, and due to the low cooldowns of both spells and the crowd control times, as long as you don't overlap them, you can typically get a second round off. So that might look something like Frostbite, nearish your tower, not under the tower strictly speaking, though that would be great, but near your tower, so that 1.5 seconds pass, then you hit them with the Crystal Nova. Now you have 5 seconds of slow. They run, they're trying to run, you're chasing them, then Frostbite is up again. So you Frostbite, and then after 1.5 seconds, guess what? Crystal Nova's back up. So now you hit them with another 5 seconds of slow. So that's 520 magic damage just from yourself, not including any blood grenades you bought, and not including any of your own attacks. Or don't forget, you're with a lane partner. So now your lane partner might have been doing a ton of attacks and a ton of spells in that time as well. And so you can easily imagine like 520 magic damage, that's a lot to work with, right? That can kill a lot of heroes depending on what else your carry or your offlaner brings to the mix as well. That's why you really want this by level 2. Sometimes you can take Arcane Aura at level 2. This is when you have a really bad lane typically, and all you need to do is Crystal Nova, the range creep every lane to secure some gold and XP. You're just trying to get by. It's not really what's happening right now in this meta, so it's pretty rare to do this, but it is something you can do. But generally you want it at level 3. Let's say this is around 3 minutes, right? Up to the 10-minute mark, let's say that's the end of the laning stage. So you got 7 minutes of time there. This is going to provide you 1,000 mana for yourself, about 500 for your lane partner if you're next to them the whole time, and then about 170-ish for your allies across the map who aren't near you. So that's just a lot of free mana for your team, and like I said, you do so much with these spells that, you just need the mana to do it. Now sometimes, if you want to go full aggression, especially if you can buy Mangoes and Clarities and no one else on your team needs it, you can get a second point in Frostbite at level 3, sometimes a second point in Crystal Nova if you want more AoE damage, but then like by level 4, you definitely want an Arcane Aura point. But oftentimes, just 2 points is enough, so something like this, then max your Frostbite, because right now there's a lot of mobile heroes that are popular, so Frostbite's really strong, you get it on a low cooldown, you can use it more often, plus if that kind of fight doesn't happen, it works on creep, so you can use it to farm the creeps to keep up your golden XP as you move around the map. It's also going to make your ult more powerful because you can root people for longer near your ultimate, whereas Crystal Nova, slow kind of helps, but like, root, they literally have to stand there and take it. Freezing Field in the past you used to skip because you couldn't handle the mana cost of Freezing Field plus spamming these 2 spells in teamfights, but now there is the tier 1 neutral choice for your neutral items. So in the past you got like, here's the broom handle, right? This is what's left. It's like, oh, this doesn't help me at all. But now you get to pick one of several neutral items that can help you with your mana pool and mana regen. So you can reliably get off your ultimate. Plus, there's the Lotus Pools if you pick up any of those for the extra mana burst. Now you get because we're maxing Frostbite, right? Longer times near your ult for more damage. So it's a lot easier to get value out of your ult at level 6 compared to the past. You may skip it at 12 and 18, especially if you're dealing with a lot of cancels that can stop your ultimate, or your like silencer mana burners who are making it difficult to have enough mana for your ult. Then you can leave it at level 1 because it's 200 less mana, right? And you still get the full value of the armor and the slows from the spell. You just get less damage. But if the damage isn't that important to you, which as a support, right, the damage in the early game is more important than the damage in the late game, you're more for utility in the late game, then 1 point is fine. After that, Crystal Nova Max is most common. You can take a point here in Arcane Aura, and sometimes like you can take it at level 4 as well, especially if your team is very early mana, like tempo focused, like with enough mana they can do a lot, like just carry me guys, 2 points can feel pretty nice for yourself as well, but a lot of times you can get by with 1 and then just go like max Crystal Nova. Rarely you will see like max Arcane Aura, like really your team is very mana dependent and they'll carry you. But most of the time you'll see something like this and then max the Aura last. For your talents, 250 health will help keep you alive. You're a squishy support. Extra cast range will allow you to position further back while still being useful. And then the freezing field damage, you're not usually there like for damage like I said, but the ult actually does do an insane amount of damage if you're allowed to ult the whole time. We joke about carry Maiden, but the attack speed is actually quite good against Phoenix, against Undying, things where you just need to attack and the damage doesn't matter, you just need hero attacks to land. Attack speed is pretty good for that. And then 25, I've been talking up Frostbite, we already got the cast range, so more Frostbite duration is going to be really helpful. If maybe you've been mega'd and you really need wave clear, then the 240 Crystal Nova damage might help you instead. But yeah, most of the time you want this Frostbite duration because it's going to be 4.5 seconds of disarm in the late game, only a 6-second cooldown. And so sure, the enemy's got BKBs and dispels, but it's not easy to always have those up when this is only 6 seconds. So really good talent for the late game. For your starting items, there's going to be a lot of consumables for Crystal Maiden, and you're going to have to figure out the balance between a lot of consumables and then buying your long-term items. But blood grenades and mangoes are great. Definitely want to start with at least 1 or 2 mangoes, I'd say, and then buy more as you need them, because as long as you can get kills with the mangoes, right, they're going to pay for themselves. Maybe you break even as the support, but your core is going to get kills, get space, and they're going to farm up a lot. So it's worth it to buy the consumables as long as you can get kills with it. If you're just buying them and you're only able to harass, it's kind of like not worth it as much. Iron Branches round out your low stats. If you need the sentries, salves, extra, regen, that's all fine to buy. The stick can be great because your team's going to be casting a lot of spells. The enemy probably is going to get sticks, and so they're going to cast a lot of spells. So the stick can be pretty good as long as it makes sense. From there, Tranquils will solve your health issues. You've got your aura for mana, and so now you pretty much never have to go back to base. It also gives you a lot of move speed, and Crystal Maiden's pretty slow. The Magic Wand is really nice for the Magic Burst, or the Mana Burst, so that you can use all your spells in these team fights. From there, I would probably just pick one of these. They're all pretty solid for her. It just depends on the game. So Pavis has a pretty nice build-up. The armor and health make you very tanky in your ultimate, and now that the physical barrier calculates reductions, that's extra value there too. Mana regen pretty solid overall, and you can use it on your teammates, so very nice item. You got the Glimmer Cape if you're dealing more with magic damage. You get the magic resistance. You get to go invis while you can't channel your ult, so if they don't have detection or they have no AoE stuns, then maybe they can't even target you and cancel your ult, so that's pretty cool. Drums for yourself, strength, intelligence, and movement speed, all stats she really likes. And then you buff up your team. So you're probably not going to use the attack speed very much, but your allies who you're trying to play very tempo with, if they're more right click focused in this early game stage, then you want the Drums of Endurance to buff them up. And then Force Staff, classic support item if you need that mobility against certain heroes. The stats are all nice for you, so great item. From there, Boots of Bearing, kind of just an extension from Drums and Tranquils. And if you get the shard, it's really cool because you can just like zoom real quick. So that's a pretty fun one. Solar Crest if your team's got a lot of physical damage, if the enemy team's got a lot of physical damage, and especially if you've got some negative armor on your team because it combos well or cancels out the enemy's negative armor, then this is pretty cost effective. Even just a casual medallion instead of going for the full Solar Crest can be worth it. If your ult is doing a lot of work, BKB can put a lot of pressure on the enemy team to choose whether they focus killing you or focus killing like your cores, for example. So when you're having a lot of success with your ult, BKB can be a good way to go about it. And if that's really working, you can go further into it in the Aghanims. But this is pretty greedy, I would say. But it is quite strong against like summons heroes and illusion heroes in particular, who frequently don't have a way to cancel your ult, but they can kind of like ignore you a bit. So if you make it stronger, the Aghanim Scepter works out really well. Blink allows you to reposition, so Frostbite lockdown, so that's good. But also, if you're getting killed a lot, you can stay way back in the fights with the Blink Dagger and only show up as needed to be in the perfect spot to use your spells, and then ult. Ghost Scepter has dropped off in popularity because it kind of does something similar that Pavis does at a worse buildup, and you like the stats from Pavis more than Ghost Scepter. But Ghost Scepter is better against physical damage because you can't take any physical damage, but you are weaker to magic damage. So if they are very physical damage heavy lineup, or someone like PA who daggers you when you die, you can't take any amount of damage, then Ghost Scepter is better. But if it's like a mix, or like you're not that worried about the physical damage, then Pavis is going to be better to deal with some physical damage, but also give you stats for other things. Or maybe you go for like the Glimmer Cape instead and go invis and hope they can't right click you, right? These have more general utility and they help your team, whereas this is very focused on yourself, but the best versus physical damage if you need it. I mentioned earlier, so Faded Brooch, Tumbler's Toy, Arcane Ring, Shovel, all really solid. Fairy's Trinket, kind of okay if like there's nothing else good. Pigpole for the stats, Occult Bracelet for the stats and the magic resist and some mana regen. Lance of Pursuit gives you a lot of mana, but you're not going to be using this passive very much. So like if you have the choice, I'd pick one of the others. But if you're stuck between like Lance of Pursuit and then like, Spark of Courage, Duelist Gloves, Broom Handle, things like that, then yeah, maybe I'll go Lance of Pursuit. And then if you're having like burst issues, you're getting killed a lot, then the health from this and the health regen's kind of nice. But usually you have more mana issues, especially because you're getting Tranquil Boots typically, so you don't really need the regen from this. But it's not too bad. From tier 2 onwards, you're mainly focusing on things that will help you stay alive, because at this point you've probably started to buy some items that help your mana pool, so you don't need it to come from your neutral item. If you still want it to, that's okay. Things like the Philosopher's Stone are great for you, but like Vambrace for strength and magic resist really helps tank you up. Same with like Pupil's Gift, armor, strength. These are all solid items, and the further you go, things along that nature, right? You get mana, you get a shield, all this stuff will be very nice. A couple things you may want to know about your abilities. Crystal Nova, your Q ability, provides 900 ground vision for 6 seconds, so you can use it to see up cliffs. This is the most useful when dewarding. It's one of her strengths as a support, but you can also use it when chasing enemies through trees. You can provide vision with Crystal Nova to kind of like chase as you go through these different tree routes. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again because it's so good. Frostbite disarms, don't forget. It can also be dispelled, so don't spam it too much if it's like you're in a lane with Abaddon, LC, stuff like that. When you want to use Frostbite to jungle, don't Frostbite in the camp and then try to kill it. The other things in the camp are going to fight you, and you don't have the best stats, so you're going to take a lot of damage. Instead, attack the camp and pull it away, and then as the creeps turn around, then you use Frostbite. That way you're left alone from the creeps. I did a little early, but you can see they're going to turn around, and now I'm not going to get attacked. And you get the extra benefit. If there's a magic resist creep, like in the Centaur camps, then your target is no longer going to get that aura if you pulled it far enough away, so your Frostbite will actually start to do more damage. I have a lot to say about this ultimate, so buckle in. You see this giant circle? The damage is not guaranteed within this entire circle. There's a lot of random chance, but also mathematical calculations that you can do here. First, in this circle, everyone will be affected by a move slow and attack slow. I mean, all the enemies will. And that is instant, and it lasts for at least 1 second. So even if you die immediately, you will apply this very powerful slow for 1 second, and that can be pretty good for your team. You will get bonus armor that helps you survive against physical damage, so that's cool as well, and that applies instantly. Now let's get to the damage part. The damage happens through random explosions. Each explosion has a 320 explosive radius. there's actually a second circle in the middle that explosions cannot happen. It's 195 radius, so it's like about here, I think. So you'll never see an explosion happen like right in the center of Crystal Maiden, but she can still damage people she's right on top of, because when an explosion happens like right here, the explosion radius reaches into the center, so that is all fine. You can actually hit targets a little further outside the circle, because when an explosion is centered right at the edge, the explosion radius then happens a little further like out here. People near you are more likely to get hit by multiple explosions, because the way this works is that this circle is actually split into quadrants. So straight down the middle and on both like horizontally and vertically. So the top right quadrant will get the first explosion, then the bottom right quadrant, then the bottom left, top left, and so on. And it'll just keep going clockwise. And that means that people in the middle are more likely to get hit by explosions from each quadrant if they happen near the center, whereas people on the outside can only be hit by explosions in that particular quadrant. And so you can see after channeling that whole time, the dummy target on the far outskirts of my ult only took 630 damage in total, whereas those in the center are close to like 2,000, 1,500, right? So people closer, and I'd say like the middle or closer, will take the most damage. Middle and outside will take less damage. You are still going to do damage, and 630 is still pretty respectable for, you know, like a level 6 ult. But this is why Frostbite combos with this really nicely, and when the enemy doesn't have a way to cancel your channels, is because in this early moments, like your level 6, fights go on, you see them use stuns, you can immediately like try to get close, Frostbite, and pop your ult. And they'll be rooted there for a while and take tons of damage, and even if you cancel your ult right here, between Frostbite and your ult, we just did 810 magic damage to a target, let alone if we throw in Crystal Nova, if allies are attacking, or if our ult gets to go even further as they try to run away slowed. You can see how you can easily rack up thousands of damage pretty quickly. When you're ulting, you can use items like Boots of Bearing or Drums of Endurance, and then like Shadow Amulet or Glimmer Cape, but you cannot use other items during the channel. So make sure you use these items like Ghost Scepter, Pavis, or maybe your BKB before ulting if you want those defensive benefits. This changes once you get your shard. Now, when you ult without the shard, you can just stop by pressing S at any moment. And you cannot stop by pressing your ultimate, because it actually just goes on cooldown. By the way, I highly recommend having this setting on if you're playing Crystal Maiden or any channel support, so that you don't accidentally cancel your ult by just issuing a move command. You have to press stop to stop your channeled ult, and you can see why that would be pretty useful. Once you get your shard, this changes. So now you can move around during your ult, you can use items like Pavis and Ghost Scepter, and you can move. You can't cancel your ult through pressing the stop command. You have to cancel your ult through pressing the ult button again. So sometimes as people leave your ult radius, you do want to stop channeling and start chasing them and use your other spells. Make sure you don't get caught off guard trying to like still press stop to cancel your ult, and you're like, why isn't it working? That's why it's not working. The shard also changes the mechanics of certain enemy spells. So I think it has to do with spells that issue a stop command. It doesn't like ever say in the description, but it's just how the mechanics work. I don't fully understand this. But say I'm channeling my ult with the shard. Now things like Treant ult won't cancel it. Things like Kunkka's X won't cancel it. So you don't have to fully know why or which ults do this, which spells are like this. I'll pop up some here that are listed on the wiki, but essentially, once you have the shard, some abilities won't cancel your ult, and that's pretty cool. Despite talking up her ult so much, you don't have to use it for damage, and that'll be the hard part of playing this hero. You need to know when to stay at the edges of fights, just keep spamming your low cooldown spells, your items, and other times you gotta get close with the freezing field to have a lot of impact, and I think that's why it's tough for new players who don't know what to look for, the stuns, the silences, to wait to see if they're down, or to know like, oh yeah, I should just force them to use it on me, and then my team will be good. But there is some extra value of like, I did show you, it does a lot of damage, surprisingly. So other new players won't know to expect that, and you can pick up some easy kills. So whether you're new or experienced, she is a good hero. Once you get the feel for it, it might take a couple games. But I promise she is pretty strong, even if your first couple experiences are maybe dying really easily and it feels bad. You just got to learn that positioning, and once you do that, you can have tons of impact with this hero. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.